Welcome to the village. So for today's episode, the Carla series is beginning, which I'm very excited about because Carla is an athletic trainer that I've been working with in our facility for years now. The reason I wanted to do a whole series with Carla is because our student athletes, there's just so many things going on with them. You know, they have injuries, they have emotional things, they have so much, and like I said, it takes a village. So this athletic trainer is someone who sees all our kids, right, Carla?
See them all.
Yeah, see them all.
7 to 12.
All day, every day. Yeah, it's great to have some conversations with you. Today, we thought we'd start with concussions, right?
Hot topic.
Hot topic.
Still a hot topic.
Yeah, you know, it is still a hot topic because I think it's come more to light of recent years. I don't know if it's because of that movie, Concussion, but some of the controversy surrounding that. But we'll talk about that a little bit. But first, I just want to get your take on it, and then we'll tell people what concussions really are and what the issues are, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, I mean, concussions are, like I said, are still a hot topic. I started back in 2009 when I first got certified. Mm-hmm. And even when I was in school, so we're talking almost 20 years ago when I was in college, we still graded concussions. And now we don't do that. So, I mean, I remember grade 1, grade 2, grade 3, and we've stopped doing that.
Yeah, I've never graded a concussion.
No, like I said, that was about 20 years ago. To think of where we are now, and we're still doing the education on it. It's still important because people still don't understand. There's so much misinformation out there.
As usual, misinformation.
So, I do a lot of education on it with our students, with our faculty and staff, and even with some of the providers in the area, because they'll tell the kids one thing, and, I'm doing all this continuing education to keep on top of it because we see it a lot in athletics, in all our contact sports, and even some of our non-contact sports. And it's just a continuous education of this is what changes. The research changes so often. When I first started, that's when they started to do that progressive return to play. And as you can imagine, there was so much controversy around it because I was taking kids out. And, what are you doing? Why are we doing this? When their parents would say, well, when I played...
Yeah, of course. It's always when I this, and that's hard.
It was. And I go back to when I got a concussion, I want to say it was 2002, 2003. Mm-hmm. I went to the ER, and then they said, all right, you're out for 24 hours. And now we're saying, okay, you need to be symptom-free for 24 hours before we do anything else. We take a much more comprehensive approach now because it's not just return to athletics. Yeah. We need to remember that the kids and even people are actual people. They're people first. You have to take the athlete out of it. Right. Because I'm looking down the road as, okay, you're going to be a parent someday. Yeah. Or you're going to be this amazing doctor or electrician or computer analyst. And you're going to need your brain. Right. You're a person. You're going to need your brain for everything. And I think a lot of the kids are very short-sighted. And I see this all the time. Whatever injury, they want to go back and play. I'm here to remind them, you're important too. I have this quote above my desk that says, the person is more important than the score, the roar of the crowd, the win. Yeah. And I think that's important to remember. Yeah, that's amazing. That's beautiful. And that's so true. That individual person, and especially with kids, right? Their brains aren't even completely developed yet. No. And that's teenagers, they think, or even like the younger kids, they are short-sighted. They don't have enough experience to realize that life goes on, life is fast. You're going to be an adult one day. They're invincible. Yeah, of course. At this age, they're invincible. Nothing can stop them. Yes. And that's my job to remind them, hey, let's take a step back. Yeah. And even in the 13, 14 years I've been practicing, it's such change in not only what we define concussion as, how we treat it, but the acceptance of it. So, like I said, when I first started, these parents were like, nah, that's not a concussion. Right. I'm like, okay. Because a concussion to them is, like a head injury. It's something major, and it may not always be their head, right? Right. So that's where I explain to them, yes, you can hit your head, but if you get hit hard enough in the chest area, whether you're playing football, lacrosse, and you have that whiplash effect, your brain's kind of free-floating in there. Yeah. And it'll hit off one side of your skull and bounce back off the other, and probably off the other side again. The hard thing is, it's not something you can see. Like, it's not a lab. And the way I define it to the kids, and even to some other colleagues, is when you sprain your ankle, when you hurt your knee, the structure's changed. Like, you've damaged it. Yeah. And we changed the structure. With a concussion, that's more of a functional injury because the brain is not functioning in the way it should.
Right.
So I think it's tough for people to believe, I want to say, that our kids are injured because they can't see it.
It's hard to wrap your head around something you can't physically see. And like we were just talking about right before we started recording, kids don't even know they're not feeling well.
Right.
So you have to pull this out of them. You have to advocate for the kid.
Yeah. I guess the lucky part of my job is I get to know these kids really well. They become like my kids. Yeah, so when something's off,
I know exactly what you mean.
When something's off, I know. They can tell me, I'm fine. Yeah. And I'll tell them, no, you aren't. Right. I mean, I have a kid right now who's very near and dear to my heart. He'll try and tell me I'm having a good day. Mm-hmm. And I will tell him, no, you're not. Yeah. Because I know you. And
that's so nice. It's so nice to have that person that sees you, watches you, cares about you.
Yeah, and I think they're starting to realize that, and it's a special kind of bond between your athletes and you, and to know that you have this person who's looking out for you. And a lot of times, I have kids that come in here, and do they necessarily need to be in here? No, they don't. Oh. They need me more than they need treatment. It's just somebody to listen to them or someone to care about them. And that's why I do what I do, because I care about the kids.
Yeah, exactly. And that shows that, as long as I've been working with you, it shows that you do care. You're very knowledgeable and you take good care of the kids. Like, anyone can trust you with their kid, that you're in good hands. And that's what it's about. It's about the person that's responsible for the kid caring about that kid so we can do what's in the best interest of that child.
It makes all the difference in the world when you have that relationship built on trust versus when I go do a per diem event and these people have no idea who I am. I have no idea who they are. And you're kind of playing this guessing game of, okay, I don't know you and you don't know me. And
it takes a while for kids to build trust. And when they do, it's very delicate. So
it is. And especially when they're going through these injuries, to have somebody who's on their side, who understands what they're going through, is a huge help to them.
Athletics are emotional for kids.
They are.
They feel so many emotions towards it. I've had so many kids in my office where I tell them, you can't return, whether it's a concussion or something else, you need to rest that for whatever reason, and they start crying, boys and girls. Like, it doesn't matter how old, this is their life.
Right. And for some of them, they need this sport, these athletics, more than some kids. Yeah. Because of their home situation. Yeah. Or what's going on in their family. And I see a wide range of kids here who, maybe only have one parent or no parents. Yeah. Or, family members are sick. Yeah. Or, somebody's passed away. And that's just their outlet.
It is.
And it's so important to them. And
it's their team. It's their family. Like, the teamwork becomes like a family. You belong to something.
Yeah. And I mean, that's a big thing here. Everything's about family. So, they'll say 1, 2, 3, Rams, family on 6. Yeah. And they mean it. I mean, it does take a village. And, you have these amazing coaches who take these kids on in addition to their own kids. And, I don't have kids, but they are my kids. Right. And parents appreciate that, you drop your kid off at practice or your game and they're going to be taken care of, even at school.
Parents can't do everything. They put a lot of pressure on themselves, but we are all responsible for that child. A child needs their school life, their home life, and their medical life, because whatever time they spend, I might be that person too, as their doctor. Yep. To pick up on something. We need to surround these kids with a whole community, right?
Especially after these past 2 years with the pandemic, and so much got taken away from them. Yeah. I think some people don't realize that. Not only were they not in school, and everybody probably thinks, oh, hey, they weren't in school, like, they're probably happy.
Great. Like, no.
No, they lost that social, emotional support that was so key to a lot of these kids. Having a safe place to go for 8 hours out of it. Some of our kids, it was 2 meals a day, because that might be all they eat. We took away their sports. We took away their prom, their ball, their friends. And for 2 years, they didn't do anything. And that really, really played with them mentally.
It did, yeah.
And we see it all day at school, just with their interactions, the way they interact with each other. It's heartbreaking.
It is, because this is the childhood experience. And everything they do here is so vital. Staying at home, that's not what anybody's meant to do, let alone a growing, developing child.
Right.
Very rarely I had a kid who was happy to be out.
Right.
Because they had severe social anxiety or something like that. But most of the kids who didn't have anxiety or depression before started feeling really down. And sports are a big, big part of it.
Huge part.
Yeah. So I think that's why something like an injury is something the kid wants to deny, right?
Oh, absolutely. Because they, again, they've lost 2 years depending on what grade you're in. For our seniors and juniors, it really hits home more than our younger kids because they don't really
they don't enjoy their school experience as much. I think as you get older, you start to bond where you're getting more sentimental because you're about to leave.
Right.
These sports are so important because it's my last this game or that game. That's a big deal.
We just had our senior nights for track and lacrosse and baseball, and you see these kids that have been a part of your life for 6 years. You missed 2 of those years, and we had the injuries, and they weren't just like, I rolled my ankle. I tore my ACL, or I tore the labrum in my hip. Wow. I tore the labrum in my shoulder.
It's rough.
It was big injuries, and trying to get them through that, I think, was a huge thing.
Yeah.
Mentally, physically.
This first thing we're going to talk about with concussions, just like a quick medical note, because you're going to get into a lot of why it's so important, because you mentioned this already about your brain getting shaken up. It's true because, when you shake up your brain, it's a trauma to the actual cells. Every organ in our body is made up of tissues, and those tissues are made up of cells. And every cell has an electrolyte function, and how electrolytes are supposed to be either inside or out of the cell. There's supposed to be a balance, and that balance gets knocked off when there's a concussion, when there's any trauma to the brain. That's what happens with a cellular level injury. So then there's a depletion of cellular energy, and because of this electrolyte imbalance and the cellular energy, the symptoms then come about because the brain is not functioning the way it's supposed to. You can't see the little chemicals and electrolytes we're talking about, and the young developing brain is more susceptible, like we said. So all of these little imbalances that we don't see, the child can feel. They may not know that they can feel this way. And again, we can't prove it. We can't show it on an MRI. We can't show it on a CAT scan. We can't show it on anything. So we have to then really push and figure out, is that what just happened? Let's really push the child to get their symptoms. I read that sports-related concussion, there's like 3.8 million a year that occur, and about a third of that at least is in the younger age group, and it may actually be more because of underreporting.
Right. They don't report it. I mean, so many kids walk in here and they're like, I had a concussion back in football season. I'll just look at them and say,
how come I don't know about this?
Like, for real?
Right.
In a sport like football, I mean, there's collision on every play. Big debate is, are they subconcussive hits or are they just a hit? I think there's more research being done on that. And you see that in a lot of the bigger college programs and in the NFL where they have the money.
Yeah.
You're not going to necessarily see it at the high school level or the youth level where they have the little sensors in the helmets that go to a computer or an app. Mm-hmm. To say, okay, that hit was just a threshold.
Oh, thank you. I was looking for a pen, and Carla she's like, I know what she's looking for. Yeah, exactly. So we don't have apps about this in the child world.
No, I mean, you might down in those bigger states where football is king.
Oh.
But up here in little Amsterdam, New York, that's just not a feasible expense.
Yeah, it's an expense. So then what would you say, like, whether it be practice or the game, so what are we looking for? And who should be looking for it?
I think it's everybody's job. That's the way I tell my teams. Be a good teammate.
Yeah.
If you notice something is off, tell a coach or tell me or tell your friend, hey, you're not right. I think we need to sit out. I am very blessed here to have a phenomenal coaching staff. Anytime anybody gets hit or they think something is not right, I get a phone call if I'm not there. If I'm there, it's go see Carla. And
I'm a very go see Carla person.
Our coaching staff preaches to our kids, you ain't going back on that field until Carla tells you it's okay.
Yes.
Until Carla tells us it's okay.
When is it not okay? When I see them, they've had the concussion the day before, a few days before, the week before. I'm trying to do clearances to go back, so I'm asking a different set of questions.
Right. Usually I watch a football game a whole lot differently than our players do and our coaches do. They're looking to make sure our kids execute correctly.
Yes.
I'm looking to see if everybody gets up. So I count, okay, everybody's on their feet. And I know my kids. So if they start walking the wrong direction or they go into the other team's huddle.
Yeah.
Or usually I see the head shake. Oh. I say to my coaches, we need to get him out.
The head shake. What is that? That's
so
intriguing.
they'll get hit in the head and they feel dizzy.
Yeah.
Or they got that ringing in their ears and they think if they shake their head, like it's going to go away.
Oh, that's kind of cool.
So they'll tell me, I just got my bell rung. And I'm like, we are not doing that anymore.
Yeah.
That is a phrase that needs to go out the window.
Yeah.
You don't just get your bell rung. And it's super frustrating for me if I send them to the ER or different providers. They'll say, well, it's mild. We don't classify head injuries as mild or severe.
This is so important. This is so crucial. This education piece is so crucial because it's so much more serious than we can't blow it off.
Right.
This is so important.
It is, and they don't understand it till it happens to them.
Yeah.
And tell me, oh well, I just did this, and I'm like, no, you didn't just do this.
Nothing's just, you can't blow things off because there's other symptoms too, right? So besides that little bit of dizziness.
Yeah, the ringing in the ears, the light sensitivity, noise sensitivity, the blank stare is a common one. They say they feel foggy.
Yeah, the fogginess.
Can't concentrate. Pressure, like somebody's squeezing my brain. And then you have the whole emotional side of the symptoms where they're nervous or anxious. You have these kids who are crying and they shouldn't be crying. Like it doesn't add up.
That's so true. There's so many little symptoms and they're sometimes hard to tease out because teenagers do all this anyway.
Right.
Especially something like emotional or like more tired,
Yeah, when I read the symptom scale on the one test that we do, sometimes I'll have to explain what the words mean because kids, they don't know what the words mean. They'll say, what does irritated mean?
Yeah.
And I'll be like, well, that's like when your parents ask you to do something and you don't do it. They keep on you. That's what irritation is.
Exactly.
And you're like, oh.
It's like, wait, that's me all the time. But no, you can tell, like, someone like you who does know the kid well and has seen so many kids. Like, you got to give some kind of credit to experience. We are all good at what we see a lot of.
Right. And that's a huge thing that I see. I had a conversation with my athletic director probably about 2 weeks ago. We were getting some statistics together. And he said to me, he goes, we had 20 concussions this year? I said, we had 20 reported concussions this year.
Exactly.
Through April. He kind of just shook his head. And I said, it's huge here. It is a lot of our treatments because then you're doing the return to play. But again, you got to remember there's also a return to learn aspect of it too. And I'm a big proponent of telling our kids, yes, you're an athlete, but you're a student athlete. And the student part comes first.
Yeah.
If you can't be successful in school, we can't allow you to play.
Yeah.
Sometimes you get that lying there. And so I've given in-services to our staff here on what to look out for. So if they have a kid in class who's not paying attention, or here we are in 2022 and everything is technology-based. So they have the Chromebooks, they have the smart boards, and everything is on a screen, which really bothers our kids who do have head injuries. So we'll have to reduce the screen time. I'll ask the teachers, can you give them a copy of your notes? Because everything's done, Google-based docs and PowerPoints and sheets. So I'll be like, can you give them copies of it so they're not constantly looking at their screen or doing the up, down, trying to take notes. Because now you're getting that vestibular part of moving the head up and down, which is really going to bother them.
Exactly.
If they're falling asleep in class, that's an issue. We've had some severe concussions here where they've been out. Most kids are out maybe a week or two, if we're being conservative. And we've had kids who've been out for 3 months to a year.
A year?
A year. I had one student athlete about 6 years ago. She had 3 concussions in less than a year. The first 2 were okay. Each resolved in about 2 weeks. And the third one, it's kind of a push from behind. She never saw it coming, so she couldn't brace herself. Yeah. Came forward not only with the whiplash effect, but hit the head off the turf. Wow. There was a whole cascade of symptoms, and at first she tried to say, I'm fine. And I said, you're still not going back in this game.
Right.
Knowing her history as well. And the symptoms just persisted for months.
What did she, like headaches, dizziness?
Headaches, memory loss, change in personality, irritability.
So just like everything.
It was everything. And so I referred her to a specialist. Mm-hmm. And instead of doing the return to play that we do, which is broken into 5 steps, each step took probably 6 to 8 weeks.
Okay.
And normally when we do this return to play, we're looking for symptom-free. Mm-hmm. And we couldn't do that with this individual. So it was, okay, we're going to get you to a new normal. I had another girl, basketball player, hit her head hard off the floor. Again, she was out for 3 months and had some memory issues. She didn't go back to playing basketball and wanted to be either a lawyer or a doctor. Mm-hmm. But I mean, both professions.
A lot of studying and reading and learning.
So they've had 504 plans here, where the educational plan is tailored to help them. So they would get copies of their notes. They would get extra time on their tests. They would get rest breaks.
Yeah.
We're not allowing them in PE class.
Mm-hmm.
So
it's crucial because this return to play, like we said, it's most of the time 1 or 2 weeks maximum, maybe 3 weeks is how long a concussion usually takes to resolve. And this return to play usually is like a 5-step.
Yeah.
Yeah. The graded, and every step, like you have to make sure you're okay for 24 hours.
Right.
And then you have to go back to the previous step if you're not.
Yeah, so, and when it first came out, I got a lot of pushback.
Yeah.
A lot of pushback. That was 2009, 2010. And it came out from the New York State Public High School Athletic Association as a, hey, we recommend this. Mm-hmm. Just about the time I came on, we got a new athletic director here. And I said, what do you want to do? Mm-hmm. I said, do you want to institute this now? And of course, during preseason, somebody gets hurt and they end up with a concussion in the scrimmage. And now I'm telling them this is the process.
Yeah,
now you have to go see.
Athlete is not going to be.
Now you got to go see the doctor, and when you get cleared, when you have no symptoms, then we're going to do this gradual return to play. And even for me, it was new back then as a newly certified athletic trainer, which was different than everything I had learned up until that point. Because again, we were doing graded concussions, and all right, when you feel better, you can go back and play. Yeah. And the research that we know now, we're just like, we shouldn't have done that back then.
Yeah. It's so crucial because you don't want that athlete going back when their brain hasn't healed yet. Because symptoms equals your brain hasn't recovered.
Right.
When you think about it that way, it's much scarier.
It is. And the kids will say, when we first meet you, you're scary. And it's because I have to lay the law down and...
You're scary.
Yeah, I'm scary because I lay the law down and I say, this is how we're going to do it. Even when that return to play first came out, everybody's like, well, 5 steps. We can do that in 1 day. And it was, no.
That's not how it works.
That's not how this works. I think maybe it took like 5 years for the buy-in to happen. What was helpful was that 2012 law, the concussion law they passed here that said, all right, every school needs a concussion management team. Every school needs a concussion protocol. And at that point, I just go back to, like I do with everything else, it's the law.
Yeah.
So I tell the kids, if you go to the doctor, even if they tell you you're not out, you still need to bring me a note.
Right.
Well, why? They told me I was good to play.
Yeah.
It's the law.
Yeah. And I don't think a lot of doctors realize it's the law.
No, they don't, because then they'll get the angry parents calling them. And I try to remind the kids, if you go to the doctor, where's my note? And try to talk to all the providers. Hey, if you see them, just give them a note that says they're clear.
Exactly. That note's necessary. Everything needs to be documented and explained.
Right.
Because I try to get into that with the explanation. And I think some of it is some of these stories of some of the things that have happened, which probably pushed more of this. I think all of these things, they cause a fear in the child too. So the first thing, the child may not realize they even have symptoms or just brush it off because the invincibility factor. But then also the fear that if I don't play, I'll be left out.
I'll lose my spot.
And someone's going to be mad.
Right. That's a huge thing with these kids. And like I said, our coaches are amazing and saying, like, we care about you as a person. Mm-hmm. So we're not going to be mad at you.
Yeah.
The only time we get upset is if you're doing something you shouldn't do, and that's how you get hurt.
Yeah. Don't lie.
Right. Be honest with us.
Yeah.
As long as you're honest with us, we can take care of you.
Right.
When you lie about it, now we can't.
That's a life lesson.
Right.
Honesty, you can find a solution. If nobody knows what's going on with anything. So these are life lessons.
Right.
which brings back why sports are so important. They teach all these life lessons.
Right. I mean, I had a kid in here the other day, and now he was complaining about his schoolwork. I said, I'll help you if you need help, I'll help you.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, I don't need school. He goes, I learn more in here anyways than I do.
Yeah, some of them learn important life lessons that are going to help them in the long run. So actually what you were saying with the return to academics, sometimes if you're able to return to academics, that's like the first step that you know, right? You can return to sports. Right. So even physiologically in your body, if you're able to do that learning, you can do that.
Because, if you think about it, if you're trying to read or, you're trying to take notes and study and you're getting these symptoms, I think it's a clear indication you're not ready to go out there and participate in physical activity.
Yeah. So it just makes sense timeline-wise, too.
Right.
I'll do the notes kind of for the teachers, too, and I think they understand, right? Actually, there was a kid in college, and she actually had a concussion, and she's nowhere near an athlete. She's in the arts, like the drama arts, things like that. So she just got a concussion because she hit her head on a bench, and she had a lot of pain, and she had the concussion symptoms. And I had to write notes. I spoke to the dean for why this was necessary, and he was fine. And as long as you can have all the notes for me that she needs to return to her studies in a graded fashion, because even that matters, right? She's not at risk as much of getting a second concussion because she's not on the athletic playing field, but you don't know.
No, you can still fall.
You could still fall, and just the fact of, let her just rest more, let her not be super active, and let her not be on her screens as much so that she can recover, so she can study and do her courses and what she has to do.
Right.
So I guess my point of that is, parents can always have either the trainer like you, the coaches, or their doctor. It's teamwork.
Right.
We are there to explain to whoever needs an explanation or a note or anything, a conversation, that this is why this child needs to get more time for their test, or because they can't be on their screens or do these things as much. And everyone understands. We're all here for the same reason. We want our kids to succeed.
Right. We want them to be productive adults at some point. We can't abuse them when they're kids by just continuing to allow them to hurt themselves. I mean, that's why we're here, is to prevent them from doing these things that can
They're
harm
children.
them.
They don't know.
And one of my favorite lines from the coach of the Mohawks, he tells these stories before every game, and the team didn't want to listen to him, and he brought out this line. He's famous for his one-liners, and he said, "Gentlemen, I've been your age, you haven't been mine."
Yeah,
meaning
it's such a good one.
meaning I've been around a time or two. I've seen this. I know what it's supposed to look like, and just trust me on this one.
Right.
So I'll say it to the kids here, and they just kind of look at me.
That's a good one.
Like, you're right. You're right.
Yeah. I'm going to start using that.
I tell the parents all the time, I say, go for it. Use it.
Yeah, use it. And I always say, too, I feel like I was 16 yesterday.
Right.
It flies, and when you get there, you want to be all there.
And the way I look at it for a lot of these kids, whether it's concussions, whether it's any injury, is I want you to lead a productive rest of your life. And I tell them, I know I'm going to break your heart here, but professional sports probably isn't your ticket.
Right.
You're gonna be, whether it's a doctor, a lawyer, a plumber, an electrician, sanitation worker, teacher.
A teacher, yeah.
Or even just being a parent. You're gonna need that brain to interact in your job, with your family, especially if you want to remember what's going on. And
you want to remember this day. Keep your brain intact for those memories. Because those memories are precious. And they are just going to be memories one day.
Right.
It's it's like these two ladies sitting here talking. But it's true. It's reality. If it doesn't resolve, there's these prolonged concussions. And then there's this thought of this post-concussion syndrome, which I guess there's no agreed-upon definition. But what do we say about that?
There really isn't an agreed-upon definition and what makes that up. They say 3 months. They say 6 months. They say a month. And you have to kind of figure out which one it is. And I know a lot of the research, seems to say after 3 months, that's when it's considered post-concussive syndrome, where you have these symptoms that don't go away. And that's in the kids that we know, or the people we know have concussions. Then you worry about the people who are not telling you what's going on. We return them to, because at the end of the day, kids just want to be kids. And they don't want to be seen as different. That's the huge thing with concussions. when you hurt your knee or you hurt your ankle and you're on crutches or you're in a cast or in a knee brace, everybody knows you're hurt. People know and they feel bad for you, but they know you're hurt.
Yeah.
When you have a concussion, there is no signs outwardly that you have a concussion. And kids don't want to be treated differently than their peers. And I think that's a huge, huge issue we deal with, because at that point it's, I'm fine. Mm-hmm. I'm going to lie. I'm going to lie, and I'm going to get back to playing. Mm-hmm. And then read about these stories where these kids end up playing and they didn't tell somebody they got hit in the head, or they have symptoms and they lie about it, and they're being medevaced off a field, and then they die.
You don't want to get to that place.
No, I tell my kids all the time, like, I don't want to go to your funeral. Like, that's not something I ever want to have to do in this profession.
It would be just such a shame.
Especially something you can prevent.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, it's our job. And the return is individualized. We don't know what actually happened in that brain. We don't know what happened previously in that. Like, of course, they say if you had a previous concussion, that may not mean your second concussion will take longer to recover, but, we just have to be on the safe side. The return to play doesn't change, but it still has to be followed.
Right. And everybody's like, well, if I get one more, I'm done. And that's when I explain to them, there's no magic number.
Yeah.
It's individual to the person.
Yeah.
So we try and tell them it's based off of how many you've had and the time of resolution for each one. The first one you might resolve in a week. Then, eventually somewhere down the road, you get the second one. And that might take 2 weeks. And then let's say you get that third one, and now you're looking at 3 months.
Yeah.
I mean, have I had kids who've had multiple concussions? Yeah. Do I think that some of them should have stopped playing? Yes.
Yeah.
I can only do so much and educate everybody on what's best for them. And, again, we have the specialist for a reason.
Now, what kind of specialist... Like, I'm a general pediatrician, but sometimes if it's going for longer, the headaches are lasting longer, I've sent them to a neurologist. But what other kind of specialist for what kind of injuries?
So we have the neurologist, and then we have the concussion-specific neurologists that we deal with, and then there's the neuropsychologists that deal with how the brain functions and how can they process this information. One of the tools that we use is the neurocognitive testing, where we get a baseline to see what their normal brain function is. And then when they do get injured, we compare it to see if there is a change. So while they can sit there and say all they want, that I'm fine, I have no symptoms, we'll put them on the computer, have them take this test, and then the test comes back that, hey, you're not functioning correctly.
Yeah.
Your reaction time is slower, you couldn't remember things, your sequencing was wrong, and it kind of opens their eyes. You can't really fight that.
Yeah, and it's kind of cool that we do have that capability, because other than that, we're depending so much on their report.
Right.
Because there's only so much, a physical exam doesn't help much either.
No.
There's not much I can see. I can see if they're dizzy. I can see if they're wobbly, if they have less strength, something like that. But otherwise, if those are all fine, but they have headaches they're not telling me about.
Right.
Or they're not telling you about, or they're telling anybody about.
Right.
Yeah, so we really have to pull, like how are you feeling? Were you nauseous? What's going on?
Yeah, and that, a lot of times that's where the parents come in too.
Yeah.
Because I'll say to the parents, you know your kid better than me.
Yeah.
So you know what's normal. And a lot of times the parents will say, like, they are definitely not themselves.
Yeah.
When is this going to be better? And I'll say to them, you'll know. I said, it'll be somebody like turn the light switch on.
Yeah.
Like, one day your kid will be down in the dumps, not even the same kid you know, and then one day just, oh, hey, they're kind of back to normal.
That's what we say, like, it's reassurance. Like, they will be okay, but we do have to know if they're not.
Right. And I've said to parents, like, especially the ones that these symptoms last forever, I tell them, I said, I'm here with you. We're in for the duration. I'm not going to leave you in the dark. We're going to work on this together, get them to the right people, and get this situated, and so you feel comfortable.
Yeah, exactly. I was kind of surprised to learn in my readings about it. I always thought you got to give them a full rest. When they have the concussion, full, complete rest, and only start the return to play when they have no symptoms. But apparently full rest could actually go the other way.
Right. That research changed in the last 2 to 3 years.
Okay, so that's, okay, I'm not going crazy. That's a new updated thing.
No, when we first started this return to play, it was, all right, you're going to go home.
Yeah.
You're going to stay off your phone. You're not going to watch TV.
Yeah.
Get off the computer. No video games. Just sit in your room and don't do anything.
Yeah. Just listen to some Enya.
Right. And now it's, okay, I want you to go home.
Mm-hmm.
I want you to lay low. Stay off your phone.
Mm-hmm.
But you got a dog? Take the dog for a walk.
Right. Brisk
Or,
walk.
hey, go walk around the block. If they're here, I'll put them on the stationary bike. Go bike for 10 minutes.
Yeah. That's cool.
And
that's something, you know?
Yeah.
Get the morale going. Like, you're not completely physically inactive. You're still an athlete. Your whole world didn't change.
Right. And that's the cool part of what I get to do. And especially being in the high school setting, in the athletic training room, all their peers are here. We have a wide range of kids for different injuries. And like I said, some kids are just in here. They need that social support. Mm-hmm. And so for them to be with their friends, like, that's a huge morale booster too.
Absolutely. That's what it's about. And even they're saying, like, with the screens, just adjust the brightness, adjust the font so it's not as much of a strain. Because then you can still be with your friends, interacting, doing all of that, which is so important to kids. No matter how much you tell them, that is how they interact.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
I would tell them maybe 10 years ago, all right, you need to talk to somebody, pick up the phone, and talk to them over the phone like we used to do.
Yeah, yeah.
None of this text messaging or Snapchat or,
Yeah,
Instagram.
we used to pick up a phone that was hooked to the wall.
Right.
And first make sure, like, your sibling wasn't on it.
Right.
And then later, as time evolved, make sure that, no one needed the internet.
Right. Now it's, all right, you can talk to your friends. Yeah, right. You can message them. FaceTime's the big thing now.
Yeah.
So there's so many different ways now they can interact with one another versus, 10 to 12 years ago.
Which is kind of great, They have all these options, but they're also, like, damaging options. I mean, these things are not good for your muscles in your eyes, but that's a different topic we can talk about next time. What else should people know about concussion? Like, what else do you deal with, or that we're educating here? We're making people aware.
The big thing that I think has changed from, like, the old school, and you still hear it from time to time. Actually, we had a girl get a concussion last week. Everybody's like, don't let her go to sleep. Don't let her go to sleep. My coaches know now, like, no, it's okay. We've checked her out and we've checked off that she has none of the red flags right now. So let them sleep.
What are the red flags?
They're vomiting. Mm-hmm. One pupil's bigger than the other. But they're just not themselves.
Like actual, like, seizure type thing.
Yeah. Which I've dealt with, and it's so scary.
That does sound pretty scary.
It was, I never had an athlete with a seizure in my career up until this point. So I was probably about 9-10 years in.
Yeah.
It was caused from a traumatic incident. Normally people think seizures, they think, they have some sort of disorder or epilepsy. And in this case, he got hit with a baseball in the head. Thankfully, I had a helmet on.
Yeah.
But he went down and he postured. So his arms are stuck. They're very rigid. They're out. It's that fencing response.
That's so scary to see that.
It was, and to hear him just crying, help me, and not being able to move. And by the time I got to him, he started to seize for a good, what seemed like forever. There's blood everywhere, and we're not sure, is the blood from the seizure? Is it from getting hit in the face? And he came out of it, and he was so combative, and he couldn't speak. And
that postictal phase of the seizure.
Yeah, and just, it was scary. And then you end up in Albany Med.
Yeah, of course.
And I'm standing outside Trauma Room 1. He wasn't from here. He was on the Mohawks. So, we get these kids from all over the country.
Yeah.
He's from Tennessee.
Oh.
And I'm talking to the parents, and they're asking me, is my kid going to die?
They're like, I shouldn't have sent him to New York.
Yeah, and it was such a scary situation.
What do you even know at that moment? You don't know what happened, what's going on.
No, and thankfully, he ended up, we say just a concussion, but it could have been so much worse.
Yeah.
He could have had fractures, a brain bleed,
yeah.
And for us to say, okay, it's a concussion.
Just a concussion may be a matter of life or death, because if it's not recognized, that's the scariest part, because if they're not allowed to rest or if they're not seeking medical attention, this imbalance I talked about can lead to edema,
Right.
And that actually, this kind of second impact syndrome, it may be the first impact. You had this example of a kid. You told me just the kid's name, so I looked it up before we spoke, and I was in tears last night watching this YouTube video about this kid.
Yeah, it's a pretty dramatic story. Preston Prevalides, and I remember I was doing research early on in my career, and I came across this YouTube. So I watched it, and you see this kid who looks like prom king.
Yeah, your everyday
football,
kid, your football kid.
You know, great personality. He goes off to college.
He was a nice kid. He was friendly to everyone.
Yeah.
One of those.
Yeah, and he got a concussion in one of his practices, went to the student health center, and it was, okay, you know, take a couple days off. They cleared him. And then he played in his game, I think it was maybe just over a week later, and took a helmet-to-helmet hit. And again, here we go with this fencing, posturing, and he was out cold. The hospital happened to be right down the street from where they were playing the game, and they rushed him to the hospital, and in that short time frame, he ended up with bleeding on the brain, and they had to do a craniotomy and make room for the swelling.
Yeah.
And when he came out of it, he was severely disabled.
Yeah.
He had to relearn how to speak. And even now, his speech
He
is
can't speak well.
very
He can't
slurred.
walk well.
No, he can't walk. His parents have to feed him. They have to dress him. And he still has some muscle issues where he can't hold his head up straight.
Because the brain, it affects everything.
Right.
On that YouTube video, I don't know if we watched the same one, it was like a 12-minute video, that they said that he had been complaining about headaches after the first concussion.
Right.
So he still had, like, and he was telling people. It's not that he wasn't the kid that didn't tell anyone. He told. He was trying to tell people, and it was just ignored or just kind of blown off. They needed him.
Right. It's such a sad
story.
It's heartbreaking to, like, watch that. And
because now he tries to educate, right? Because his thing is, he said he doesn't blame the game, he blames lack of knowledge.
Right.
And that is the saddest thing I've ever heard. That's so sad. Like, he still loves the game.
Right.
He goes and tries to educate around because he's from the Jersey, like South Jersey, Philly area. He says that the hardest part now for him, and he's in his 30s, 40s, the hardest part is waking up every day and knowing I can't do all the things I want to do.
Right.
And like you said, we need to preserve the brains for the future because the future is it.
Right.
He's in his 30s. That's when you do what you want to do.
Right. And instead of taking care of his own kids, his parents are still taking care of him.
And it's so sad to see.
We're kind of in that generation right now where you have these young kids and then their parents and then their parents are taking care of their parents. So they're kind of like sandwiched in the middle there.
Right.
You know, trying to take care of their kids, trying to take care of the parents, trying to take care of them.
Yeah.
Here's this family still taking care of their son.
It's sad for the whole family. And having a kid, this child that you're watching grow and nurture, it's such a blessing for all of us who get to be a part of these kids' lives. So we really need to value that and do whatever we can. And sometimes you're going to meet resistance.
Right.
That's the sad part. We can't ruin our kids. We can't break them.
No.
We're not meant to be broken. Yeah, I mean, there's also some of this is really controversial, but with the NFL and how this movie Concussion came about with this doctor who was working as a pathologist and just starting to see some of these football players that had these deceased players in their autopsies had some similar findings in their brain, and he really pushed for it. He got a lot of pushback from the NFL, as you would imagine.
He did, and a lot of people didn't give him credit for it, too.
Yeah.
And then now you have out in Boston, you know, the new brain bank, and you hear of all these NFL players committing suicide.
Yeah.
And their notes say, "Send my brain to the brain bank." And they shoot themselves in the chest or, you know, they hang themselves because they don't want to damage their brain so it can be studied. I think every brain that they've studied has showed that there's these huge changes with the CTE. That explains their personality change and how they became aggressive. You know, they don't want to live that life.
I think a lot more players are coming out with this because it's kind of a different thing, right? Is it repeat concussions, repeat injuries to the brain? These are major NFL athletes we're talking about, but this is kind of along the same lines of brain injury and how crucial it is and all of the negative effects it can have on you.
Right. You're starting to see players retire early. we have these players who used to play into their 40s. Now they're retiring at 26, 27, 28.
Yeah, make your money and get out.
Like
live
3
a
or 4
normal
years.
life. Yeah.
And then you think back to, okay, those are our NFL people.
Yeah.
These are superstars getting paid millions of dollars to do this. What about all those college kids? They get their scholarships, they get their education, but they're not making it to the NFL.
Yeah.
Or, again, high school kids.
Yeah, we're not even making it to college sports.
Yeah. And then you have our youth. There's a really good speaker. His name's Chris Nowitzki out of Boston. And we were fortunate enough to have him here to speak to the community. And he was actually in the WWE. And that's where he got all these concussions. And, you think about, WWE, a lot of it's fake and sometimes they mess up.
Right.
And I think he got hit with a chair and got knocked out. He's hit his head multiple times and he just had headaches, the memory loss. And now he goes around and he speaks and educates all these different communities on these really serious injuries.
It's great to hear it from the athletes because they're the ones these kids look up to.
Right.
So I'm glad that this is becoming more something on the forefront. But it starts on the lower levels here. The education and the people who are in charge caring.
I went to a conference in January. One of the topics they hit on was concussions and mental health issues because of it.
Yeah.
And I think we forget that sometimes because, again, this is a brain injury. It's changing everything. The chemical imbalance is just crazy. And so, again, concussions are a slightly different animal because, when you hurt your ankle again, when you hurt your knee, we can do things to make that better. There is really no treatment for concussions.
Right.
So
we depend on the rest aspect.
Right. And it's a cascade of events. So now they're hurt. Right. Now we have the depression set in. Now we have the anxiety set in. You just see this total change in the kids and how they behave and interact. And it's just they don't even want to be around their friends. They don't want to be near their sport. And sports they love, they've been doing since they were little. They're not able to go to school. So they're not with their friends, they're not with their teachers. So it's a huge thing and piece we need to pay attention to as adults and providers. To look at these kids and see that aspect and treat that too.
Yeah, we have to treat the whole person.
Yeah.
We have to treat every aspect of that kid because, again, sports, everything is so emotional.
Right.
This is a very emotional time too. The teenagehood. There is nothing like that teenage life. They're so unsure of themselves. These things define them. And yeah, just the physical, the medical part of it. Like you said, the imbalances, those chemical imbalances that happen with the brain. That's why it's sitting up there in your head because it's controlling the rest of the body. Right. Including your mind, your mentation, just everything.
I mean, I've gotten fights with parents and I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
Because, my job is to protect the kids.
Yeah, it is your job.
And
sometimes it's you versus the parent.
I have a lot of great parents that I get to deal with. Absolutely. But,
course.
Every once in a while you get the one who very old school and, concussions aren't a big deal. And I've had 700 of them and say, sorry, these are the rules. And, the way I phrase things has evolved over the last 10 years where, I will say, okay, under New York state law, your child has been removed from competition because they are displaying signs and symptoms of a concussion. Under the Concussion Act, they now need to be evaluated by a medical provider.
Yeah.
And it has to be a doctor. They have to be cleared by their provider or the school medical director.
Right.
Not the ER physician who doesn't know these kids.
Someone who knows.
Yeah.
Because it's a baseline.